All right, so we are broadcasting live right now. So thank you guys, thank you everyone, thank you for joining me here today. I'm excited. I'm excited for many reasons, but in particular because we have my friend Tony Williamson joining us today as the guest. He has joined us in a few of these events, and he's been very instrumental in his sharing. And so it made perfect sense that he joined us today. So in a moment, I'm just going to share a little bit about the week, and then invite Tony to share a little bit about the topic of the day. The topic of the day is love without sacrifice. And then we're going to go into any Q&A or anything anybody wants to share. You are welcome to share and do so. So today's topic is love without sacrifice. And I chose this topic for today for a few reasons. Coming off the heels of Thanksgiving, there's actually a tie-in with this idea of love without sacrifice that I thought was important to look at least for me and my experience. And this is in reflection of what I used to think gratitude was about. And many of us, and there's nothing wrong with this, but many of us are used to looking at Thanksgiving or looking at this idea of gratitude based upon what we seem to have in our life or in our life experience. So most of us think to ourselves, or at least I've thought to myself many times, I'm grateful for, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to have possessions in my experience. I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. I'm grateful to have food on my plate. I'm grateful for the technology in my experience and so forth. So that's the typical way that we think of gratitude. We often think of gratitude in terms of the things that we have. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. The beautiful thing about that as we reflect, in fact, I remember when I first started this spiritual journey, I remember watching Oprah, and one of the tips that Oprah had shared was this idea of every night before going to sleep, writing down everything that we're grateful for. So there's value in this idea of taking a moment to say, what am I thankful for? We go through our list of everything that we're thankful for. And the beautiful thing about that is that it brings to the awareness this experience of gratitude. So as we contemplate what we're grateful for, we actually have an experience of gratitude. And A Course in Miracles says that the beautiful thing about gratitude is its proximity to love. So when we are grateful, there's actually an experience that's happening. And that experience is synonymous or very close to, if not the same thing, as love. So when we're grateful, we are in the experience of love. And throughout the Course, we're told that what we are is love. And we've forgotten our identity as love. So what a beautiful thing that gratitude offers us. It offers us an opportunity to come back and remember what we are, which is love. So that's the beautiful thing about taking a moment to think about all the things that we are grateful for in our experience. Now, looking at that, let's take it a step further and a step deeper. As we recognize and use the tool of inventorying, if you will, everything in our life that we're grateful for, we also come to realize, if we look at this thought system a little closer, we come to realize that, first of all, the cause of the gratitude can't be in form. So on some level, this idea that we're grateful for the things that we have can't actually be true. Because when we think about it, if I say to myself, I'm grateful to have a roof over my head, that is only in comparison to this idea that there are people without a roof over their head. If I say I'm grateful for, the clothes, if I'm grateful for the technology I have, it's only in relation to those who don't have it, or it's only in relationship to the thought of not having it. So what I'm saying is, if I set myself up with the belief that I am thankful or grateful for the things that I have, and that is based upon this idea of not having it. In other words, if everybody had a roof over their head, what is there to be grateful for if that's the standard? If it's the standard that everybody has everything, then we can say that there's really nothing to be grateful for. There's no thing. In other words, what I'm trying to say is gratitude doesn't have to come at the cost of someone else being without. And if gratitude is love, if the proximity to love is the benefit of gratitude, then there's something deeper. And so what I'm saying is once we recognize what gratitude is, we don't need things to have that experience. We can use the tool of inventorying what we're grateful for, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great experience to think about the family that we have and everything else. But when you really look at it and we start to say that the cause of our gratitude is because of things in the world, then we are accepting this idea of love or gratitude at the expense of others not having it. So this is basically an invitation to start to look at how that mind works. Can we be grateful no matter what? Why is it that we need to be grateful for things? What's the setup in the mind that says that I can only be happy when a circumstance is a certain way? When we start to look at it, we start to see that, wait a second, this is actually a slight trap. Because now I need either things or objects or circumstances to be in a certain way to have this experience that is our inherent right in our experience. It is what we are. So I thought it was interesting to look at this idea of gratitude and to shift a way of thinking or expand our scope of how we typically think of gratitude. We typically, again, most of us think of gratitude in terms of the things that we have, the circumstances that are going right. But what we're aiming for, and really this experience of peace that we're going for, is not determined or based upon or subject to what's happening in the world. So my gratitude or the experience of gratitude is not subject to objects coming into my experience. It's not subject to ownership. It's not subject to whether or not I have a family or don't have a family. We're going for it all. We're going for a complete sense of peace of mind. We're going for a complete sense of joy, a complete sense of who we are in truth. So if we want to know ourselves beyond the experience of a body, then we need to move beyond the needs of a body. That doesn't mean that we're not grateful for the food on our plate. It doesn't mean that we're not grateful for our family. All we're doing is we're bringing awareness into the way the mind is thinking and training us in this world, and we're looking at it, not even to do anything about it, just to kind of laugh and think about it. Can I be grateful without this? And why am I really grateful? Am I really grateful for this because somehow this is special? And what does it mean when I make the things in my life special? What are the consequences of that? And when you start to think about it, then you start to think, oh wait, there is actually a consequence. When I've made something special, then that means when it's no longer there, can I still be grateful? Can I still be happy and peaceful when it's no longer there? Can I be happy and peaceful knowing that not everybody has it in their experience? So this is the deeper teaching that the Course is leading us to. And so this idea of love without sacrifice means basically that it is our inherent right. There's no need for sacrifice to have this experience of gratitude. There's no need for sacrifice to have this experience of love. We don't have to be grateful for things that we have that other people don't. The moment we're grateful for something that other people don't have, then we need other people to be without it for us to be grateful. So our gratitude comes at the cost of someone being without something. So this is an invitation to look at that thought system and really asked to go deeper in the mind with what it is that we want. We want the experience of gratitude, but our intention now is to move past this idea that it comes from or is caused from the world. Love does not require sacrifice, so we're going for an experience for which no one loses in this. No one's losing. And just to switch a little bit past or to a different topic, I wanted to share a little bit about love without sacrifice in my life. And, you know, for so many years, I always used to think that love, that the sacrifice is inevitable when we're trying to experience love. And what I mean by that is, and this has shown up in my experience so much in relationships. You know, I remember in many of my relationships, even now, I'm not trying to be foolish enough to think that it doesn't come up now. But, you know, if we are love, and if love is whole and complete, that means at no point are we asked to go without. To sacrifice is to go without, is to settle for something less. And what the Course is teaching us, and really every spiritual teaching that's aiming at this experience of peace, enlightenment, awakening, the experience is full. It's not missing a piece. It's not missing anything. But for some reason, the mind, in my experience, has been trained to think that if I sacrifice, if I go without, if I go with less, so let me go with less so that you can have more, and then maybe I'll be loved, or maybe I will get love. And this has shown up in my experience many times, especially in relationships. You know, especially in the beginning of the relationship. I think a lot of relationships start that way. It's actually kind of funny when you start to look at the dynamic. It's like, I remember in the beginning of my relationships, many times there would be things that bugged the hell out of me. And I would just be, oh, no, that's fine. I'd be so enamored and so in love and so with such an intent to want to be a good person. And I think in some ways that's where sacrifice for love comes from, this idea that I want to be a good person. And there's something very admirable about sacrificing so that someone else can gain. And here's this unbalance, this sense of, you know, if I somehow go with less, someone else is going to gain. And there's no unbalance or imbalance in where the Course is leading or any spiritual teaching is leading. Love is, again, whole. So it must be that if I think that I need to be something different or something less for someone else to be loved or to experience love, then I don't know what love is, because certainly going without isn't what love is. I remember I would sacrifice, you know, I'd be in relationships, I'd sacrifice money. You know, take this share or portion of the money to do what you want to do. I'll go without because I want to be loved. Or, you know, I will, you know, sacrifice my needs or what I want, or compromise, you know. It's like we're taught in relationships, it's all about compromise. It's all about compromise. But you know what the funny thing about compromise and sacrifice is the moment we compromise, there's an unconscious record that we keep. And that record that we keep in our mind that says, you know, I did this for you, I did it for you. That's the story we tell ourselves when we sacrifice or we compromise for someone else. I did this for you. And so there's like a notation, an unconscious notation. And then all of a sudden that notation, what starts off as something very seemingly innocent, then begins to grow like a cancer in the mind. And then the next thing you know, there's a fight or an argument, and guess what comes out and gets thrown? I did this for you, and look what you look what you're giving me. So funny, I was talking to my brother, and this is a good example of this. I was talking to my brother recently, and I love him to death, and he was sharing with me, he was open and honest and sharing about frustrations he was having with his son, Adam, and my nephew, who I adore as well. And my brother had put Adam through school. He put him through, you know, through high school, paid for his education, paid for, you know, to support his son, what most parents do, and has, you know, in many ways has taken care of him over and beyond on a financial level. And so Adam was acting up. You know, Adam wasn't complying wasn't, getting the job, wasn't, doing what he needs to do after his graduation and moving on and so forth. And I remember having a conversation with my brother. My brother's like, can you believe him? He's acting up. He's doing this after all that I've done, all that I've sacrificed for him. And this is a common thing, this is a parent story, but this isn't everything. This isn't a child story. This isn't a relationship. And my brother's like, he did this, he's not complying to, he didn't say it in those words, but he's basically saying he's not complying to my wishes. And that is the ego's version of love, where there's all these conditions. And certainly I know in my brother's mind and in most people's mind and in my mind, at the moment of compromise, there isn't a conscious thought that says, I'm going to sacrifice now because I want something in the future. But that's really what's happening whenever we sacrifice. We're actually setting ourselves up for something that we want out of it. There's a reciprocity. And so love does not have any reciprocity. It really is this welcoming of everybody and everything being as they are. And that's ultimately what we want. And I have no intention of trying to define love. That's not what I try to do, and certainly not what the Course is trying to do. But if we're ever in a situation where we are asking or demanding that love be in a certain way, or there are conditions to it, then it's not love, and it's not peaceful. It's not peaceful. So that's today's topic: is love without sacrifice. How do we recognize some of the dysfunctions in our mind that seems to limit or put limit and definition on love? And I would argue that limit and definition on love is usually an ego's version of love, which really isn't love. So at this point, I'd like to introduce my guest today, Tony Williamson, who I'm really excited to have here with us. And I'd love to just hear what's in his heart and then open it up to anybody who wants to share, if anybody has any questions about anything that I shared, and certainly anything else that may be with the Course or anything. Just join on in. So Tony, I am going to hand it over to you. Welcome to the group.
Oh, glad to be here, man. Really, really glad to be here. And, the topic today is one of those subjects that it's one of the reasons that people have a love-hate relationship with the Course of Miracles. Because the Course is so radical in its demands, literally, that we're honest with ourselves. And, we have a lot invested in our sacrifice, all the sacrifices that we make. You talked about, people first the relationships. I think unconditional love is what comes into play, when relationships just begin, and it lasts for a good 15 or 20 minutes. Where the other person can't do anything wrong. No matter what they do, you can handle it. It doesn't. No matter how they treat you, you just can accept them. But then you begin to have an investment in your relationship, where you've contributed to the relationship, and then you begin to have a scale or a balance, and you start measuring, are they in balance with you? Are they keeping up with your contribution? Are you getting at least 90 cents back for every dollar that you invest, so to speak, rather than 10 cents? But this is a very, very tough subject. I just want to interject real quickly from the Course, because the Course is so brutally honest in how it makes us. It gives us the opportunity, really. I shouldn't say make us. It gives us the opportunity to look at ourselves. But he says that you see no other alternatives, for you cannot escape the fact that sacrifice gets nothing. It gets you nothing, but we think it gets you everything, right? Sacrifice is so essential to your thought system that salvation, apart from sacrifice, means nothing to you. So, we can't, unless we're really making sacrifices, God can't love us, basically. Your confusion of sacrifice and love is so profound that you cannot conceive of love without sacrifice. That you just literally cannot conceive of love without sacrifice. And it is this that you must look upon. And then the next part of that sentence, or the end of that sentence, is one that really sets you back on your heels, because it says, sacrifice is attack, not love. So, how does attack come into play in sacrifice? And one of the things that is, that I've learned through my study of the Course is that sacrifice is as far away from God or as far away from love as you can be, right? So if you're looking to really understand love, you have to completely relinquish your attraction, really, addiction is a more appropriate term, but attraction and addiction to sacrifice. It's just such an embedded theology, if I can use that term, because we see everything through the eyes of sacrifice. And I would just give you a quick example. Let's take a young man just out of college and he's got a good job and he's single and life is good and he's doing what he wants to do, and then he meets someone that he really wants to be with. And the first thing that he starts thinking of is, well, I'm going to have to quit doing this, and I'm going to have to quit doing that, and I'm going to have to give up my time with this group of people, and I'm going to have to quit doing those kinds of things. The first thing he starts thinking about, with this new person in my life is, what kind of sacrifice am I going to have to make? I mean, that's literally how we see love. And the game that we're playing with each other, the interesting point is that that's how we see God. We really believe that God cannot love us if we don't sacrifice. And so we play, literally, with our thoughts and the things that we want in the world of form, and we put off loving God, and we put off our relationship with God, because that, obviously, to have any amount of love at all in the world of form requires tremendous sacrifice. So to have a relationship with God requires what? Ultimate sacrifice. Ultimate sacrifice. Even the story of Jesus was about what? Ultimate sacrifice when we look at it through the eyes of the ego mind. So it's a tough one, Craig, and it can go round and round in conversation, and I love to discuss it with people because it brings up so much stuff that we can look at, because there's so much stuff underneath our investment in our sacrifice. And we're really using sacrifice literally to manipulate people. And we have to really look at that. We have to use this as an opportunity to look within and be self-honest. And why am I doing this for this purpose? So here's the last thing I want to say, and then we'll open it up for questions and conversation. But how do you get out of it? How do you get out of it? It's real simple. Okay, Course in Miracles teaches it over and over and over. You join with Spirit first. That's all. It's called the Holy Instant. You join with Spirit first before you do anything. Father, why am I driving home after work today? In other words, you join with Spirit in every decision and everything you're doing. And before you make a sacrifice and allow the ego thinking to trick you once again that you're in a game of conditional love, that you join with Spirit and you allow Spirit to inform you so that you understand that you can extend love and you move into a giving state of consciousness rather than a getting state of consciousness. So anyway, it was a fun conversation, and I really enjoyed the way you opened up the talk today, Craig.
Thank you, Tony. And yes, if anybody has any questions or wants to share, this is definitely a good time. You can just raise your hand or unmute yourself and just jump right in. It's a very casual time together.
Well, I'd like to add something, if I may.
Please do. Hi, Kurt. Welcome.
Thank you. My first time here, enjoying this very much. I've been a student/teacher for a long time. Always enjoy these meetings. But get specifically to the point and keep it as simple as possible. I think this is a great example of the so-called upside-down thinking, where we go around trying to fill the void of wanting or experiencing love by conditions and sacrificing and so forth, when the answer is very simple. You experience love by giving it away. That's it, that's all.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to seek it out there, as Tony put it, we extend it outward, and that's how we experience it. And it's really that simple. And we can complicate it to death by analyzing it, and I've gone through that, and I do that. But I think it comes down all to that, and that would be the best 2 cents worth I could put in about it at this point. So
Yeah,
thank you
that's
for
beautiful.
listening. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's if we are to come to know ourselves as love, and we've seemingly forgotten it, then how better to remember what we are other than to give it away, to recognize actually, wait, if the course does mention how that you are joy by giving joy. If you've made someone joyful, if someone else has smiled because of your contribution, then it must be that it's in you. Oh, okay, and not physically in me. I look at my body just as
Right.
symbolically, but it really is us. And that's and thank you. That is a very good lesson to remember. And Tony, when you were talking, I was kind of giggling to myself because I do remember. I like many people have been in a lot of relationships, and it is funny how in the beginning of the relationships where you're just ready to put up with anything, and it just goes to show how desperate we are to know ourselves as love. Unfortunately, it seems, because we believe ourselves to be separate, we do have this guilt, not justified, but it's seemingly still there, especially when we're starting to scheme our way to love. We believe at the core that somehow we're not worth it, and that's why we sacrifice, and that's why we compromise. It's like we have this belief that we're not worth the love. Like, who am I to be myself? It's like it's a crazy thought or question, because it's like, who am I to be myself? It's like, wait, but that's the thinking that's involved, it seems, when we buy it. Why else sacrifice? And it's funny because in guilt, in some ways, is also sacrifice, because with guilt, when we hold on to guilt, whenever we feel guilty, we're trying to beat ourselves up enough to redeem ourselves. It's like if I can beat myself up, if I can feel guilty enough, then maybe I'll find salvation. I will have beaten myself far worse than God has, or God will. Not that God would ever, or Source would ever want to beat us up, but that's the crazy thinking that we have in our mind, that we come into situations as if we're actually less than worthy.
We can't really grasp love. Love is what we are. It's like trying to teach your cat how to be a cat. It just is a cat, right? It just is a cat. It brings up, and I use my girlfriend's cat a lot in conversation because it brings up great example. But have you ever been able to teach your cat how to drive your car? No, probably not. And if you have, we need to hear about it. But actually, Claudia found a posting on Facebook where this cat was actually driving a car, so I had to modify my example. But the interesting thing was the cat was driving the car and was all happy, and they're going down the road, and there was a bunch of people in there, and they're all singing and happy, but they drove over the cliff. Right? Because the cat can't drive the car. And the ego mind is like the cat mind. It cannot conceive, literally, it cannot conceive of love. It cannot conceive of God. So it makes it all up. We make God up in our own image because God's going to be like us, right? We heard that we're, made in God's image, so we make God up in our image. And we make love up. We define God's love in our own image of love. But the cat can't drive the car. It just can't do it. Because it can't, no matter how much we tell it about it, it can't get in there and figure out how to do it because it's beyond its contextual ability to comprehend it. And God is the mystery that we are so blessed with, because it's beyond the little mind, I call it the little self-mind, ability to comprehend. So the only way that we can actually return to the knowing of love, to the knowing of ourselves, and to the knowing of God, as God is revealed to us in each and every experience, in each and every now, and each and every now, each and every now, is to first turn and join again, hello, the holy instant. It's the first thing. It's the only thing that'll ever lead you to really beginning to perceive correctly, because you can't know. The ego mind, the little cat mind, cannot really truly know anything. It can only perceive. And so the best we can do is to set it aside and join with the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's the Holy Instant. And then allow that voice, which is the voice for God, which is nothing more than our right mind, but to allow that then to inform us from that place of knowing. And that's called a miracle. A miracle is a sudden shift of perception out of a misperception, mind that's incapable of grasping these things, and joining with the mind that knows these things and can reveal these things to us. And that's the whole thing that the Course in Miracles is really about, is letting go of our little self and joining and communing literally with the Holy Spirit, which is a pretty exciting place to be once you begin to grasp the power that reveals to you. Just want to say that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's it. It's direct experience is what we are being called to. You know, if you know, you mentioned the Holy Instant a few times, and you know, you can use different words, the present, the now, but really these words are pointing to a direct experience that is undeniable and precedes any mental construct or story about ourselves, about the future, and so forth. And it's like coming into this direct experience, which has no definition, right? The Holy Spirit is not defined by anything. The experience of ourselves, you know, Tony, you've mentioned it before on this call, that in the Urtext it says, you know, you are the Holy Spirit. So it must be that we are the definitionless awareness that precedes the dysfunction of thinking, which is always going to say that we are separate. We are a separate person. We are a separate mind. And what we want desperately to remember is that we're not separate, because we know that the cornerstone of every problem and all suffering is that we think we are separate, because with that idea comes the belief or the sense that we are without something. So I love what you shared, which is come back to the Holy Instant, which is, you know, it appears to be that it's simply just pausing and just wait. What is really real in my experience? What is my direct experience? And the only thing that's real is this definitionless awareness that is always with us, that is available to us effortlessly. You know, we don't have to try at what I'm pointing to. And so in it is peace. There's nothing going on. And isn't it peace that we want in our deepest suffering, in our deepest worry, in our deepest fear? All we want is to be okay. But the irony is, if we look at this to what you're pointing to, Tony, this Holy Instant, the Holy Spirit, and there's a lot of names for it, the presence. Now, if we look at it, we recognize that there is a sense of okayness. And so this okayness is not an idle gift, because it's what we desperately want in our deepest fear and our deepest worry.
I would argue that, of course, I was going to say, Craig, I would argue that we actually do want to be separate. That's the ego's entire game. It wants to be an independent authorizer. You know, we talk about the authority problem in the Course in Miracles, and that's a topic for a different day. But the point is that the ego mind absolutely wants to be separate. It's playing God. It gets to define how everything is and who everything is and all of the mutually agreed upon definitions, and we get really happy when everybody agrees and we agree with them, because we feel safe with our little world of mutually agreeable definitions. But when we don't like it is when we discover that we can't do it. You know, we get down to the bottom of the barrel, and no matter what we've done, we ultimately have to admit the truth that we are completely incapable of running our life. But until we get to that place, and I've been on the other side of that for many, many years, you know, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this every day, get up and fight and fight and fight. And all we're doing is obviously trying to manipulate other people to get what we want out of life. But the ego loves the game, because as long as the game is being played, and it is being played only by the ego mind, the Holy Spirit is holding our divinity in trust while we play with the ego. That's it. And just real quick, if we've got time, I'll just say, I'll try to make this brief, but people sometimes ask me, Craig, this stuff, okay, I don't grasp the Holy Spirit thing. How is this Holy Spirit? And it's nothing more than my right mind. Well, how's the Holy Spirit really communicating, connecting? How can I connect, whatever? And I just want to give you an analogy. Every night when you go to sleep, you dream of being wherever you dream of being, right? And you could be on a ship, you could be on a motorcycle, you could be in a hot tub, you could be at a restaurant, you could be with people you know and people you don't know, it doesn't matter. But you have all these dreams, right? But you are completely oblivious to the fact that you're safe at home in bed. The whole time you're safe at home in bed, and when you wake up the next day, you return to the memory of your bigger self, this waking self, that knows that we're going to have a hangout today, right? And the people that are going to be on there, and people are going to be listening, and where we're going to go today, and what we're going to do tomorrow. We got this life and the people that are in our life. But this little mind, this little quote-unquote cat mind, this little sliver of mind that we parcel off and go, and every night we do this. We go to sleep, and there's this little mind, right? And it's having all these experiences, and it's completely oblivious to this self that we're talking with right now, that we're communicating with right now, right? We've walled it all off, and it has no idea that we're safe and home in bed, even where we are and who we're with, right? And what our life looks like. But the next morning we get up and it's all there, and but you know what? That mind, this mind right now, it knows everything that the little sleeping mind knows, doesn't it? It's there for the whole ride, even though the sleeping mind is unaware of it. Well, just remove it one more level. That's the Holy Spirit. It's nothing more than you holding your divinity in trust, your true capital I identity, capital D divinity in trust while you dabble with this little cat mind, this little ego mind, right? But it's always with you. There's no such thing as private thoughts, because your true self has been with you through the whole ride, if I can call it that, or the whole dream, as the Course refers to it, just like this self is with us all night long when that little smaller part of our mind is dreaming. So that's really another good analogy or symbolism of how the Holy Spirit is and who the Holy Spirit really has, how the Holy Spirit has a relationship with us, because it is us. Even though we've got the volume turned up so loud on our own stinking thinking that we don't hear that voice. And it's called a still small voice, if you will. It's not still and it's not small. It's just that we've got our ego mind turned up so loud we can't hear it most of the time. That's why our practice begins by settling down and being quiet. And I even like to use earplugs, Craig. I like to turn it all off so I can literally hear the voice of God.
It's beautiful. The analogy of the dream is always so helpful in so many ways.
Yeah.
I just want to pause for a moment and just remind everybody, if you want to jump into the conversation or have a question, by all means, you are welcome to do so. Just unmute yourself and jump in. I like the idea or the contemplation of the dream, because when we start to look at this experience as a dream, we can recognize, there's a lot of things we could recognize. The one thing that I always like to remember is that in a dream, it feels real when we're having the experience of, when we're in a dream and we are in it, we don't know of anything else other than that reality, and in that experience we are making decisions, we are making conclusions, we're assuming that there are separate entities in that dream. So if I'm having a dream and I have family members there or friends in the dream or people I don't even know, there's an appearance as if those people have a separate will, and so there's this whole world that is happening. But upon awakening, we recognize that that whole world, which seemed to have separate people with separate wills and where I was drawing conclusions, all of that was a manifestation of the mind that was dreaming it.
Yep. So
it's like, okay, so if we look at this experience, then we can see from that analogy that, oh wait, there's actually something else for which this is all taking place in, And that is my reality, not this perception or appearance of separation, but rather my reality is in what contains or what for which all of this is arising, and that is my true identity. And then from that standpoint, that helps me recognize that's how we're connected. We're not connected here in form. We're not connected because we share a planet. We're not connected because we look like each other and because we can think. Yes, those are similarities in this experience, but no, we're connected on a very literal. The Course says the Holy Spirit is in you in a very literal way. We are connected in a very literal way in the sense that what we are connected in what all of this is arising in.
What was very helpful to me with all of this was when I read the part where it says, don't try to decide if it's true or not, just what if it was true? Because it's basically too big of a step for us. So that's why the Course stresses over and over, happy dream. It reminds me of the movie Shallow Hal, where he said, hey, if it's real to me, what do I care what other people think? Right? So this is what the Course encourages us to do, to get in touch with what is real. So when we try to analyze it, or at least for me, is it true or is it not true? I found that a stepping stone for me that was very helpful was just to ask, what if it was true? Happy dream.
Or ask the Holy Spirit what the truth is.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Ask the Holy Spirit. You'll get an answer. All are called if you choose to listen.
That's right. Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, that's a quote. I'm not making that up.
Hey, another one that there's just so many things to have a conversation about. But one night I had a dream. This was fun. I'd like to share it with you. But it was a lucid dream. I began to realize that I was asleep, and dreaming. And I was on a Navy vessel, and so I'm walking up the gangway, to get on this Navy vessel, and it begins to dawn on me that this is, I'm not in the Navy, and this can't be real, and then I'm dreaming. And so anyway, I see this young sailor there. And so I start talking to him, we start having a conversation, and the conversation's going, and all of a sudden I thought, this is a dream. This guy doesn't even know where he's from. And I'm having this thought, right? So I asked I started laughing at myself, and I asked the young man, I said, where are you from? And he says, blah, 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 blah. And I started laughing. I said, he can't even say where he's from. I said, where are you from? And he goes, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, he doesn't even know he's from Portland, Oregon. And he said, I'm from Portland, Oregon. So you're actually having a conversation with yourself, with everybody that you're dreaming about having a conversation with in your dreams at night. You're putting all those thoughts in their mind, and they're reflecting them back to you. You're making it all up. How wild is that? The mind is powerful.
Yeah, there's brilliance to all of this. Even this gathering, right now, it's like, if we think about it, going back to this analogy of the dream and the awakening, it's really the one mind. So it's not like there's 10 people in this room that are awakening. There's actually one mind that is awakening, and each one of us are seemingly playing our part in this awakening. So there's never anything said that's wrong. There's never anything that's said that's not out of place. There's never anything happening in life that is out of place. Everything, the Course says all things work for good. Only in the ego's judgment can that differ. And it is my experience that the reason why that's said is because everything is happening for the awakening or the whole of our shared mind. So it's one mind that's waking up. Of course, the Miracles also says how many sons of God does it take to save the world? One. There's only one mind. So that is helpful for me whenever I conclude or make the assumption that there's something in the world that should not be happening. And this is definitely hard for the ego mind to grasp. I guess it's incapable of actually grasping Yeah, thank you. Incapable of actually grasping. But this is really, this is important to remember when we are quick to judge against something that's happening either in our experience or something that we hear about, or we believe something needs to change or be different. And if those thoughts come up, that something should be different and something should change, then that thought too, is just as much welcomed as everything else. So, and again, it just goes back to the brilliance of life and the way it is unfolding.
So, do you find yourself making sacrifices in your dreams, Craig?
Of course, yeah, they come up, and so, coming off of what I just said, and there's the forgiveness. Therein lies the forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
So it's this willingness to, the truth is, if we're going this deep into this conversation, there's nothing wrong with sacrifice. It's only when we believe that we are the person at the effect of sacrifice, in which case we're suffering. So if sacrifice is happening, then we have to accept that that is part of the unfoldment and that is part of the awakening, that happens. But from the perspective of an awakened mind or the awareness of what our true identity is, there can't be any sacrifice. Even if it appears like that's what's happening in form, even if it appears like the actions are unfolding that way, from the awareness of our true identity, everything is working together. So there's no sense of separation.
Yeah. Well, love given defenselessly without attack, okay, because sacrifice is attack. So love given defenselessly, right, and love given without any expectation of return. As you were talking about your buddy earlier in the conversation, even his son, he's like, he has expectations because he's loved his son, that his son is supposed to reciprocate that in a certain way according to his, intentions or wishes or whatever his perception would be. But love itself, true love, unconditional love, is given defenselessly. That means with no expectation of return whatsoever. No sacrifice. We have a quiet crowd today, Craig.
Yeah, everybody's basking in spirits.
Yeah, the no sacrifice idea reminds me of the quote, God is not willing that his son be content with less than everything.
Exactly.
Keep that in mind, folks.
You already have everything that is, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, this is Mark.
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm loving everyone's input, and it's kind of noisy where I'm at, so I've been kind of wanting to jump in, but I didn't want all the noise to disrupt things. But yeah, I mean, the discussion here, I don't think I can add to it. Everyone's input's been beautiful, and I'm learning a lot from it because it triggers things that are so true for me, but hearing it come from other people and their maybe slight variation on perspective in it is actually very helpful. So just want to say thanks to everyone so far.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you as well. It's being very helpful. So.
Hey, Tavi, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for sending me the link. Appreciate it.
I know there are a lot of people listening in today, Craig. I think my mom's listening today. Yeah. I'm hoping my brother's listening too. We got some folks down in Tennessee listening in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess I'll share one thought. Someone was talking earlier about sacrifice in a relationship, and you often hear that relationships are all about compromise. And I guess compromise is another subtle way of introducing sacrifice into relationships. And you know, if you listen to the course or read the course, it would seem as though compromise is the same thing. And so maybe we can try and conceive of relationships where there are no compromise, in the sense that your interests are joined, and you are just so in the moment that each of you is doing exactly what you want or need to do or need to experience. And there's this union in that experience, and no one's having to give up anything to have that experience or be with someone. So just another thought as that was going through my head as we were talking about this idea of sacrifice.
So is there sacrifice is there sacrifice in a holy relationship? Because the relationship.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to answer the question. Is by definition, being holy is whole. It's complete. So I would say that there isn't sacrifice in a holy relationship.
Yeah, as the Course defines, of course, special love, special hate, and a holy relationship. And this is a very, you know, you talk on this for weeks and weeks because it gets to the core of what the Course is trying to teach us. But a holy relationship is a relationship wherein we set aside all the small-minded ego, you know, needs, lack, scarcity, whatever it's trying to fulfill in the relationship, and we give the relationship a new purpose. And the holy relationship, the purpose is to join hands and to help each other to awaken. So the relationship itself has a completely different purpose. So no matter what the other person does, it doesn't matter, because they're just there to remind you and to help you to awaken. And you're there to remind and help them to awaken. And so that relationship is one in which if that person takes off and leaves, you know, then you're perfectly okay with that. You're in a space of absolute mastery, of acceptance, if you will, or mastery itself could be said to be, you know, acceptance of all things. But a holy relationship is one in which, regardless of what the other person does, you love them unconditionally, and you put no compromise or trading values, no giving to get invested in the relationship.
Yeah, I love Mark's comment about, I don't remember exactly what you said, Mark, but the term unified experience comes to mind. And that's really all that we can share. You know, the Course talks about how we really can't share anything else but a purpose and in an experience. So that becomes really the purpose of the relationship. When we're talking about, any relationship, romantic, family, really, you know, to Tony's point, this really shifts the way we are typically looking at relationships. In my experience, I've always, and I can only, I see this only when I'm looking back. At the time, there's no recognition of it, and I probably was afraid to recognize it. But it was always to get something. I mean, so many people, I hear this a lot from single people. You know, I want to be in a relationship, and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way. This has certainly been my experience many times. I want to be in a relationship, but not even recognizing that there is a wanting to get something from the relationship, be it love, be it security, be it safety, be it companionship. There's a wanting to get, and the wanting to get comes from an inference or belief that something is already missing. And so this going into a relationship is, or looking for a relationship to get something, is always going to be built on the sand. It's not going to be something stable. Whereas when we go into a relationship to share a purpose, you're really building the foundation on the rock, because your purpose is already set forth as peace. You know, the purpose of the relationship is peace. So guess what? When a problem comes up, what's our purpose? Peace. Oh, okay. So the solution's allowed to come in. And so with everything that's unfolding, it's always coming back. It's resetting back to our purpose. Peace, 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 peace. And to Mark's point, I think the peace comes when we are simply allowed to be ourselves. and that means no compromise. That we are in this relationship, but we're allowed to be, and so in that being, there's a demonstration of this unconditional love. You don't have to be anything for me, and I don't have to be anything for you. Inevitably, however, I would argue that still stuff comes up, even with that in mind, and it does come up for the purpose of healing, which is what the relationship will now serve, a purpose of peace.
Well said.
I have a quick question. There was like a time, probably like a month ago, I was running late to an interview for a new job, and it looked like the traffic was really bad, and I wasn't going to get there in time. But I decided in my mind, like, I have to get there on time no matter what. And somehow taxi came and everything worked out, so I got there directly on time. My question is just like, in listening to Holy Spirit, how do I know like when I have to decide and when I have to like strictly do something or when I have to like sit back? Does that make sense? Does that make any sense?
It does. You want me to jump in, Craig? When you're truly listening to the Holy Spirit, and one of the things that you'll grasp very, very quickly is that it's the voice of certainty. See, there's no ambiguity in that voice. It's so far away from what we have experienced through listening to this ego mind trying to convince us that it is us, and it is not us. But as we withdraw our attention from it and we begin to listen to this other teacher, which is nothing more than your right mind, you begin to recognize something that is absolutely foreign to you. It's the voice of certainty. And when it speaks, if it says, just go out to the corner down there on a certain street in town and just sit there on that corner, then that's what you'll do. And you'll have no doubt whatsoever, because doubt cannot enter in that mind. See, doubt and uncertainty, which is conflict, only is experienced in this mind called ego mind. So as soon as we step out of that mind, it's a state of mind. When we step away from that state of mind and then turn our attention, if you will, our awareness and consciousness, and give that over, as some would say, to the Holy Spirit, then we join with that mind, literally. We become one with it. As Jesus said, when the mind in me is in you. And that is the voice of God. It is the voice of certainty. It's profoundly certain. And everything that it utters, it sets aside any fear or doubt or concerns that you have. So if you feel still conflict or anxiety in certain situations, try to turn the volume down, on our own thinking, if you will, because it's our thinking is what we have to set aside. You're not going to like this if I tell you this, and I say, well, you were not created to be a thinker, right? Well, what's the first thing you think of? Well, let me think about that, right? Right? You're not created to be a thinker, so when we can quieten that mind, that's a thinking mind, and become a listener, become awareness itself, then we are informed by the voice of certainty, the voice of wisdom, which is nothing more than your right mind.
Nice. Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, for sharing. Thank you, Tavi, for asking your question. I will give it another moment. If anybody wants to share or ask a question before we sign off, we will be signing off in less than a minute or so, but I just wanted to open up the space and just jump right in or take yourself off mute if that is the case. And while I'm waiting or giving the space for that to happen, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. There were some people who joined the room that I didn't get a chance to say hi to. So hi to Yvonne and to Lori and to Paul and to Roberto and Stephanie and everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is really heartwarming to be witness to others who are on this journey of awakening and have this burning desire to know truth. So I recognize myself in all that's unfolding. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm entirely grateful. And Tony, thank you for joining me this week. I appreciate your insight, your support, and love for the course as well. So thank you, Tony.
Thank you for allowing me this time to be with you, my brother, and just spend some time and talk about my favorite subject. Absolutely. God bless you.
God bless you. God bless everybody. Thank you. I will see you next week. We'll be back here at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And next week we'll talk a little bit more about special relationships, which is a topic we started to talk about or dabble with today. Special relationships next week, and my guest next week is Mark Anthony Lord. Really fun character and guy, so I'm sure he'll bring a lot of laughter and joy to our hour together. Thank you, everybody. Love you. Love you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.